not logged in into Zoom with single sign-on, and this means that even if you are co-host, you are not able to record the meeting. Indeed, you are not labeled as a co-host for this meeting. The only one apart from me that can record the meeting is Abhishek, because probably he did log in with he's logged in Zoom with VMware credentials.
Yeah.
With corporate credentials. Anyway, so what are the goals for this meeting? So it's something that first we need to define together. In my opinion, it's a sort of a crossover between an engineer and a developer meeting and a release management meeting, which basically we need to take care of two things. One, we need to take care of making sure that releases are correctly planned, that items that we expect to deliver in a release are on track, and if not, we either push them out of the release, or we take a corrective action, like seeing if we can focus the community attention to these particular items. The second part is a sort of developer meeting, where we use this space for discussing issues, for discussing proposals, existing proposals, and for brainstorming new ideas. Perhaps not now, but hopefully in the very near future, this should also become a sort of user forum, which we will discuss not only among developers, but also with users, what are their most important needs, what are their pain points in using this solution, and how we can make their life better. And say that if you think that we could add something else to the goal of this community meeting, please just let me know, speak up. All right, so the next topic on the agenda is to go together through Antrea architecture. And basically, I know that most of you on this call already have already know it very well, but it could be a good refresher for other people on the call, like myself, for instance, which I'm still a little bit struggling with a few concepts. So, it might be good if we can spend some time, 10 minutes per app, providing an introduction that to a discussion of the architecture that will stay recorded here. So, we can also, it can also be useful for other community members. And Jianjun, do you feel like you will would you like to go through the architecture document?
Sure, I can quickly go through the architecture doc we have. Can you want me to share the screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, could you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, as outer side, I think most of you guys already know about Antrea architecture pretty well. So probably I will just quickly go through the components and some high-level design stuff we have. First, for the Antrea, at a high level, we want to be Kubernetes-centric and Kubernetes-native. The first one means we want to focus on Kubernetes, and we support only Kubernetes. And we want to optimize Antrea architecture and implementation for Kubernetes networking. We don't support anything else not needed by Kubernetes. So it's a little different from some other general purpose SDN, like Owen or even Calico. We don't have any general abstractions or unnecessary overhead to support these abstractions. We only support networking for Kubernetes. And also by Kubernetes native, we means we want to leverage Kubernetes technology and Kubernetes solutions as much as possible. Later, we'll see actually we use Kubernetes container framework, API server library, and CRDs, and API aggregation, and many other technologies to build Antrea. And the Antrea actually use OpenVSwitch to be the data plane. on every node. I assume you guys already know about OpenVSwitch. It's a high-performance programmable vSwitch. It supports both Linux and Windows, and actually also BSD. But for Kubernetes, probably Linux and Windows are more relevant. OpenVSwitch is very flexible, so it enables Antrea to implement Kubernetes networking, the layer 2, layer 3, and the network policy in a high-performance manner. Since it's programmable, it's very easy to add new features incrementally on a single data plan. So we definitely want to incrementally add more features, more networking and security functionalities and service to Kubernetes with OpenVSwitch. Okay, let's move to components. So let's start from the Kubernetes node. On every node, we also have an OpenVSwitch. That is a bridge and the vSwitch to implement all the networking data plan functionalities. And then we have an agent. The agent and OS daemons run in a Kubernetes daemon set. There are 2 containers in the daemon set. The agent is responsible for programming OpenVSwitch to do traffic forwarding overlay tunnels and implement the network policy with OpenVSwitch. Probably we can see a little more details later. It also programs IP tables, but it's only for the traffic from one local port to the node network or external network. So we do have IP table rule, actually a single rule to do SNET for traffic from port to node network. So the traffic will go to the node IP and then send out to the node network from the node IP interface. Also have a CNI plugin on every node. That is the interface to kubelet. And then kubelet will execute CNI plugin for every new port to be created on the node, or for every port to be deleted from the node. And in our case, the CNI plugin actually doesn't do much. You just call the Antrea agent, which does a real job to create IP interface for the port, allocate IP address, and connect IP interface to the OS bridge on the node. Last one, we have a controller. Now it's deployed using Kubernetes deployment. We support only a single replica for now, and its major job is to compute net policy, Kubernetes network policy, to IP sets, and then the member ports, and push computed policy to agent on every node. Then the agent can actually just use the computed result to program OpenVSwitch flows. For debugging purpose, we also have a CLI command line tool we call Antrea. It can dump some basic information from Antrea controller, and it can actually, I didn't show this in the picture, but actually it can also dump some basic information from Antrea agent. This CLI tool can be executed remotely from any node that can access Kubernetes API or Antrea controller. It can also be executed as a kubelet plugin. That means you run kubectl and then specify the Antrea CLI Antrea to be the command. So in that way, you can use the kubectl, the tool most developers familiar with, to run our CLI. And you can also use kubectl config file for the Antrea API discovery and authentication. And we also have this UI plugin in Octane. Basically, Octane is an open source UI dashboard for Kubernetes. Antrea has a plugin in Octane. It's also for debugging purpose, and it can show some basic runtime information of the Antrea components, like a health status, the version, and some other information. It actually got all the information from Kubernetes API series Antrea CRD, Antrea Customer Resource Definition. So both a controller and agent will create CRDs in Kubernetes API to expose the runtime information. So the Octane UI plugin can query the information from the CRDs. Yeah, that's what we have for the components. Since we don't have much time, maybe let's just go to the port networking part. And then we can talk about how we configure IP interface for every port and connect to them to OS bridge. So it's quite straightforward. On every node, we have an OS bridge called BRint. I think it stands for integration bridge. And we have a single subnet for every node. Actually, it's allocated by Kubernetes node IPAM controller. It's Kubernetes upstream code. And for every port, we have an interface. The Antrea agent will create an interface and allocate one IP address from the node subnet. And then we have a vEther pair with the inner vEther device to be the Ether0 interface of the port, and the outer vEther device to be connected to the OS bridge. And then on the bridge, we have the gateway 0 interface, we call it. It's the gateway of the subnet. We also have a tunnel 0 interface. This one is for the overlay tunnels, and we now support Western or Geneva tunnels. Okay, that's one. Let's briefly talk about the traffic flows. So for traffic between two ports on the local node, it's very simple. Traffic goes from the Ether0 interface inside the port namespace through the vEther pair to the OS bridge, and then it will be directly forwarded to the destination port with the outer vEther device, and then to the Ether0 device inside the bridge. Sorry, inside the destination port namespace. So traffic never leaves the OS bridge in this case. And then for the traffic between two ports on different node, again, the packet will enter the OS bridge on the source node, and it will be forwarded to the tunnel interface. And here we'll do a Western or Geneva encapsulation based on the configuration of the Antrea. And then the traffic will be sent to the physical interface of the node. Of course, if it's a virtual machine, then it can be the virtual NIC. And then it will go to the destination node, and then again be forwarded to the tunnel interface of the OS bridge, and being decapsulated here, and forwarded to the destination port interface. And then last, for the traffic from the node to the from one of the port to the node network or external network, it will go through the OS bridge too. But it will be forwarded to the gateway interface on the OS bridge. And here, based on the host routing tables, it will go out from one of the IP interface on the node. We talked about we have IP table rules to the SNet. So the packet will be SNetted to the node IP address and go out to the physical network. Maybe we should say underlay network, since the node can be a virtual machine. The last one for the traffic to the cluster IP service. Actually, Antrea now leverage Kubernetes upstream Kube process to do the distributed load balancing for cluster IP service traffic. So what will happen that the traffic from the port will go to the gateway interface. Since the gateway interface is in the host default namespace, so no matter you use IP tables or IPVS or user space mode to run Kube proxy, Kube proxy has a chance to intercept the traffic. and do DNet and subnet one of the backend ports to be the destination, and the DNet to the destination IP and the port from the service cluster IP. And then if the destination port is on the same node, then very simple, it will go to the with the device of that port, forward it to the port interface in the port namespace. And if it's in other node, it will go through the tunnel, overlay tunnel again, and then to the destination node, and finally reach the destination port. I think we roughly spent like 10 minutes already, and already covered most of the high-level stuff. Maybe let's stop here for today, and we definitely can do some more details later.
That was a very good introduction. I really enjoyed it. I mean, now it's the time for questions and for discussion, and I would like to start with one question. Could you clarify what we do in the node to prevent or at least limit broadcasts like ARP broadcasts?
Sure. So you see, let's look at this one. On every node, we have a single subnet, right? Mm-hmm. So for layer 2 broadcast, it never leaves that subnet. Actually, we don't do much special for that. For example, the port can start traffic with ARP request, right? It will just go through standard ARP protocol and be broadcast to every local ports in the same node by the OS bridge. And then one of the port will reply to the ARP request. We don't really support layer 3, I mean, multicast or broadcast across nodes yet. Mm-hmm. The only other broadcast traffic we have is like, you can have broadcast traffic for ARP request to resolve the destination of the tunnel traffic. For that one, actually, what we do that we in OS bridge we directly inject the ARP reply for such ARP request. Mm-hmm. So basically, what the tunnel interface actually, what we do is we share one single virtual mic, and then for the ARP request to the remote host, actually it's a gateway interface in this case. Actually, we always use virtual mic to reply to the ARP request.
Perfect. I mean, I believe that it's great that, you know, as a matter of fact, layer 2 broadcasts are, or layer 2 traffic, pure layer 2 traffic is terminated at the node, and we never send broadcasts across tunnels, which should be good for, you know, for scalability and performance. All right, thanks for your answer. Is there any other question?
I just wanted to say on a related note, I think two important missing pieces of documentation right now, or like especially like developer-facing documentation, or a description of the OVS pipeline, and a description of how we compute and disseminate network policies and implement network policies. And I'm working on the first part right now, and so that will cover things such as, well, what we just talked about, how ARP traffic never leaves the node, and so hopefully
good.
Make it easier for people to understand the pipeline.
That would be perfect. And we do have some short description on net policy implementation in this architecture doc. Probably we don't have time to go through it in details, but you guys can look at it.
Yeah, I was more talking about like maybe like a detailed example, like if you have such and such Kubernetes network policies, here what gets transformed at the controller, and here what gets sent to the node, and here are the flows that you end up with. Not user-facing documentation, but really like developer-facing to understand what's going on.
Yeah, makes sense. I think we should also document how to troubleshoot for developers. Basically, for example, you can connect to the controller API server and dump all the objects.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Anyway, perhaps for the next instance, for the next meeting, like for the next Antrea meeting, we could have probably a deep dive into network policies, if that can make sense for you.
Yeah, I think that would
Alright.
be great, actually. Yeah. I can also do a deep dive on the OVS pipeline after I'm done with the documentation.
Yeah, probably you're right. Maybe from a conceptual perspective, introducing the OVS pipeline before the network policies might make a little bit more sense.
Tomorrow, I mean, next week, you may have guests from Mellanox coming.
We have no guests.
We're recording the meeting, Pooja.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that'll be great. The more we are, the more the merrier. Anyway, now we should get into the release management part of the meeting, which is what I am usually terrible at. So we need to decide what is the timeline for our next release. And I mean, not really decide, but at least tentatively define a timeline. And also,
how to track it, I think, too.
Yeah.
Define how we're going to track it. Yeah.
Yes. And so anyone has any opinion that you would like to share? Antonin, Pooja?
As far as release tracking, yeah, I think we should. I've used GitHub milestones in the past. I think there are also more advanced tools on GitHub as well, like project tracking. I'm not too good at that kind of stuff, but I think milestone is a good first start since we have a fast release cadence and not that many contributors for now. So basically, we should just decide on a timeline, triage issues for each release by assigning them to a milestone, and then basically keep track of what's left before we can cut the release and reassign issues if needed.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I can volunteer to do that kind of tracking.
Anything that has a simple workflow is perfect for me. So, I was thinking of using Jira. It's perfect. I love it. Everybody loves it. We should use it. And unfortunately, there is no free plan for Jira, so it's not open source. So we'll have to stick with GitHub. But for the time being, I think that milestones are perfect because we just need to label every feature with a candidate milestone. That's all that we need to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So in terms of timelines, I believe that let's say that we need to discuss whether we want to have the timeline for the next patch release, let's say for mostly, which should be mostly bug fixing, and then the timelines for the next minor release if we want, or I mean the next release where we think we might have some meaningful feature to add or a more stable platform. So for the patch release, maybe I was thinking that perhaps we can look at a few at open bugs, decide if there is any bug that deserves a new release to be published, and then once the bugs are fixed and the tests for those cases are added to the CI, if applicable, we can do the patch release. The minor release is a little bit more complex because I would like to know from you what are you, in your opinion, the team? What should be the theme of this new release? Stabilization? Do we have some very urgent feature that needs to be pushed, or do you need some to add? Do we want to add some integration with some other piece of software?
So originally for 0.2, we are thinking about at least we should stabilize the code. Of course, light policy. But even for other features like connectivity, since we have never done a good enough test in my mind. Probably we should do some test to see any potential issues. And also we saw about we should do some scale test for light policy. Probably we are not expecting very good scale, but at least something to show we are not doing very bad. And then I was also thinking about CLI. For that, I think it depends on the timeline we want to do 0.2. I'm not sure we can finish CI. Or maybe we can do some simple CI commands, but probably not.
I mean, makes sense. I believe that this is probably quite good enough for a release. I mean, if we have our release target by the end of the year, doing another release,
yes,
that should be a good payload. I'm curious about scale testing. I've seen on GitHub that we are already working to make these tests reproducible. So maybe meaning that everyone, if you want, they can run scale tests. But then are we thinking about periodically running them as a periodic job in our CI, publishing scale tests periodically, and then trying and push the scale limits a little bit more when the project grows? Or do you have any different idea?
So for CI, I think so far we are talking about we want to include the Kubernetes conformance test and ladder policy test.
That makes sense.
Maybe Antonin, you guys have an opinion. Abhishek probably also have an opinion.
Yeah, I think basically, I think 0.2 should be our first release that we actually qualify in a way by making sure that all the conformance tests and network policy tests pass. So I think we should basically hold off on the release unless there is something urgent until the test can pass, and we can say, okay, all the tests are passing now. And potentially there's the result somewhere. So I think that should be our milestone.
Yeah.
And for scale testing,
for the network policy, do you guys...
Yeah, go ahead, Abhishek.
For the network policy, do you guys reckon that we should have named port in the support in the 0.2, or that is a little further down the line?
But if it's needed for...
Is that a big effort, Abhishek, to implement named?
Yeah, that would be not a trivial effort, at least.
In my mind, we can do it later if we cannot make it into 0.2. So Salvatore and Abhishek maybe
results. We should publish the
I
results.
thought it's not a very critical feature to support it. Not all the thing I implementing support that.
Sorry, but I know that the conformance tests at the moment are not running network policies test.
No.
But I seem to recall, and I might be wrong here, that there is a separate test suite just for network policies, right?
Yes.
And that test suite requires support for named ports.
Yes.
Okay.
If we don't have that, the case will fail. Already saw that.
That's right. So Abhishek, why is it particularly difficult supporting named ports? Because I mean, initially I was thinking it was just a matter of adding the mappings to Antrea controller.
So every pod with the name port might have a different port number associated with it on different. So this might require some changes, not just in the controller, but also on the agent side, and a little more thinking on the logic to figure out the ports associated with this pod. So we need to reevaluate a little bit on the design of these internal Antrea.
Makes sense. I see.
So
it makes you more comfortable. NST doesn't support that either.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's say that the main goal for the release are supporting the Kubernetes conformance tests, adding some form of CLI, and then we can discuss on GitHub exactly what kind of CLI support we want to integrate. Then stabilization, work on scale testing, and then let's consider named ports for network policies as a stretch goal.
Conformance tests and the network policy tests.
Yeah, network policy test. In network policy test, I mean, we'll skip the named port test if we don't make it.
Yeah. And for the question, probably we should discuss how to run them. Probably we cannot run all the tests for every commit. One way that we select subset of the tests to run for every commit, and we run
That's
our
right.
tests periodically, like daily or hourly or for every release. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think even if we don't have like everything automated for the first release, even if we have to manually run them, so long as we document the steps and we publish the results for the release, I think it's a pretty good start already. Maybe
Yeah.
it may take some time to automate it so we can run it like every day or automatically.
Yeah, I think that part of the network policy tests, having them as a part of the, let's say, the ordinary CI, it could be good. And also, adding those tests technically should not add a long time to the end-to-end test execution. As for the conformance tests instead, last time that I went through them, there are actually not a lot of conformance tests that can be impacted by the CNI. Let's say that probably less than 5% of the conformance tests are something that has have an impact on the CNI plugin. So, I don't think whether it's a good investment for the CI taking part of the conformance tests and making them part of the regular CI workflow, or whether we just want to evolve our end-to-end test. Sorry, go ahead, Antrea.
Definitely select a subset of network policy tests, a representative subset to run. I don't know if we can run all of them. I don't think we can run all of them on a public CI, that's for sure, but maybe on the internal Jenkins bed, maybe. I think Abhishek probably knows, but it takes more than an hour, I think, to run all of them if you don't parallelize anything.
Yeah, I think when we were trying to merge some of the code and did some testing, the initial everything required, and it ended up being about an hour for the entire suite to run.
I mean, they might have added, I have not run the test suite for a while, but they might have added quite a lot of tests because it used to be like 20 minutes, not an hour. Anyway, good.
But yeah, we
so
select a subset of them, like one for main port, one for, I don't know, and just at least run a couple of them.
Yeah, eventually we'll end up in a situation where our CI2 takes like two hours to run a test. Unfortunately, eventually we'll end up there, but for the time being, maybe not. But do you think that it's slower because you were running it on kind, or you were not even running it on kind?
They were not running it on kind.
Okay.
I'm speaking for Chan and Abhishek here. I think they were running it on Chan's testbed. Okay,
perfect then. So now we need to finalize a date, a tentative date for the release. And given that it's December, the only question is before or after Christmas. Usually you don't release before Christmas. Every time we do that, we end up working until the 24th of December. So unless we have any sort of user priority, I will say that a next release can come also in the first week of the new year. Or if we are ready in 2 weeks' time, we can release in 2 weeks' time, but I don't know if we can be ready in 2 weeks' time.
It really depends on the scope. I think if we're okay with not including, named port support, and if we're okay with like bare bones for the CLI, I would think we could do that before Christmas.
Okay.
Do you want to target the 20th of December?
Which day is it? It's
Tuesday? Friday.
A Friday?
Fridays on what's the Wednesday before that?
It's the 18th.
I think if we could make it on the 18th, that would be good. If we could target the 18th.
Okay, let's keep it targeted for the 18th now. Then maybe next week we can make another assessment and see where we are.
So yeah, I can create a milestone for that on GitHub and set the target date to the 18th.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Is there anything else related to the next release that we would like to discuss?
So are we planning to have a bug fix release before the 18th, or
to be honest with you,
that will
I
include all of that?
don't see any issue that is critical enough to grant a bug fix release. And maybe since we are discussing bugs, we can move to the bugs bullet of the agenda and then discuss feature proposals in the last few minutes of the meetings. So in terms of bugs, I'm going to share my screen, and one of these tabs has the issues. Oh yes, the one that I have open. So we have, at the moment, we have 10 open bugs. I had a look at the whole bug list, and in my opinion, there are some bugs that are, let's say, serious, but there is no bug that is really critical. For instance, the only one that bothers me a little is this one about default network policy rules that are not enforced correctly. It's not a security problem, because it would be a security problem if if traffic that's supposed to be denied is instead allowed. But in this case, traffic that is supposed to be allowed is not allowed. So if we want to do a bug fix release, ideally, this is probably this one, 131, and this other one, 119, are the ones that might deserve to be included in the bug fix release.
Let's talk about 119 after, but I think for 131, one issue potentially is I think that the fix for that maybe depends on a lot of changes we've made to network support since the original 0.1.0 release. So maybe actually just cherry picking that change may require like putting in like a lot of stuff, or may not be super trivial. I don't know.
Okay, yes, because the other thing that I want to discuss with you is what is the release overhead and these kind of things. If we want to do a patch release, then we need to branch out to do the cherry picks. If it is an easy cherry pick, then okay, we can do it. But if the code has moved and the patch is not a clear cherry pick, which means that we have to apply multiple commits or redesign the initial commit in a way that can be cherry picked, then maybe I would say we can wait for the next minor release.
Yeah, because we already have the release branch. We did a bug fix release last week because we needed to fix the kind support. I think that was the main motivation.
Yep.
And so I did the whole like cherry picking process. Most of the stuff was pretty straightforward. For a couple commits, I had issues where I had to resolve conflicts manually, and it's always a bit of a risk, right? Because you risk like just breaking something.
Yeah, and I found out that Golang is not really, doesn't make really easy to handle conflicts. I don't know why, but I get lost when I have merge conflicts in Golang programs. Anyway, so let's say that 131 is probably critical enough, but it's not by itself. It's not granting the need for a new release. And then the other one that I wanted to discuss is 119. I think, Antonin, you have a...
Yeah, I do have an opinion on this. So basically, to give context, the issue is somebody tried to deploy Antrea on GKE where a CNI was already running. And so they just applies a Antrea manifest, basically. And some pods were already like present in the cluster, and they had like IP addresses allocated by the previous CNI. And so Antrea just started reallocating those IP addresses. But I think the core of the issue, I think the action item for us is more to document what should be done when you want to deploy Antrea on a cluster that already has a CNI. I don't think there is any like bug really to fix because that's kind of like the expected behavior. Sure, we could always say we're going to look at the existing pods from the API server, get their IP addresses, not allocate those, but like it just makes no sense to have like old pods with old IP addresses managed by your previous CNI still like pending. So I think we should just say, basically, you need to delete your old CLI, apply Antrea, and then basically take nodes offline one by one and migrate all your pods, and then bring the nodes back up. So I think we should just document the process.
I agree, and I'm sorry, I didn't know that this was the GKE bug that we discussed a couple of weeks ago already. I thought that it was another one. So yeah, I think that we can, providing a sort of statement like the one that you just gave us, we should probably consider closing this issue, because it's not a scenario that we can support. In the future, maybe in the medium-term future, we need to have a solution for figuring out how Antrea can work well with the CNI chaining. That's something that we have to do. For instance, at the moment, Antrea doesn't have you can't have your own IPAM CNI, for instance, and feed the IP address that's been provided by the IPAM into Antrea. That's something that you cannot do at the moment. But in this case, it was completely different. You had another CNI that does wiring, and then Antrea was supposed to do rewiring for that network interface, which of course it is a scenario that
expectation.
Yeah, it is a scenario that it is difficult to support, and to be honest with you, I don't think we want to support that scenario. It doesn't make a lot of sense, in my opinion, having a CNI that takes what the other CNI has done and says, okay, stop there, now you do what I say.
Yeah, I would agree. Actually, even GKE guys comment on the issue. They probably agree. It's not something Antrea I think I can handle gracefully.
Okay, so I'll take an action item for myself, maybe for tomorrow morning, to go through all these issues and maybe start closing the issues that we all agree, I have consensus that we cannot fix and that we can just close.
Well,
and then
now I think we should still document. Maybe it's obvious to us, but we should still document what happens.
Okay, makes sense. Okay. So finally, the only other bug that I would like to bring up is the one that Antonin opened yesterday evening. Deleting Antrea should do a complete cleanup. So first, Antonin, is this a bug, a feature, or half enough?
Yeah, I actually started as a bug, then I moved to a proposal, and then I was like, no, this is a bug. Let me go back to a bug. So there's a lot of info in that report there, but I think what this is about is basically, when I do a kube control delete Antrea, I do expect that everything created by Antrea should be removed, and that includes like the bridge, the OVS bridge, that includes a gateway interface, that includes like all the routes we program on the gateway interface, which obviously are going to disappear if we remove the gateway interface. But that's kind of like connected to the previous issue in a way. It's like if somebody is running Antrea and God forbid they want to move to a different CNI, well, doing a delete Antrea and then an apply my next CNI.yaml basically should work. And I think if we don't clean up all the Antrea resources properly, then there may be issues and conflicts with the next CNI, right? Because we're going to have that gateway address there with an IP address assigned to it and routes assigned to it, and that doesn't sound too good.
I see. Still,
and the difficulty is there is no good way right now in Kubernetes to differentiate between I'm deleting all my Antrea resources with kube control delete and oh, my pod just crashed, and or my pod got deleted and is getting recreated as part of a rolling update of my daemon set. And for those things, we don't want to clean up the gateway and clean up the bridge. Only when you delete all the Antrea stuff, you want to clean up those things.
So in my mind, you need another trigger to indicate you want to do cleaning up. If we want to do that by Antrea agent, probably we can use config map, like a new option to say I want to clean up. Then the agent should watch option and then start cleaning up. Well, another way, probably we can have a clean up daemon set if we want to go that way. So you just apply the daemon set, just do clean up.
Okay, I mean, and
Slack window, Salvatore. I don't know if you
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I tend to keep forgetting that the
You're sharing,
screen
yeah.
that the screen was shared. Anyway, so the
So it's not a big bug, but it's just kind of like that
Yeah.
falls into the stability,
Yeah.
usability category.
Actually, I kind of agree it's important at least we need some way. Otherwise, it's pretty hard for user to manually clean up. They need to know all the resource created by Antrea.
Yeah, no, and
Which is-
definitely, and applying, I mean, having this may be like a good way to handle, especially at the beginning when we do releases that may break like backward compatibility. If you want to apply a new version of Antrea and something is broken, it would be great to be able to delete the old Antrea in a way and make sure everything has been cleaned up properly.
Okay, and I think that part of the problem is that Kubernetes is probably not even that good at switching from one CNI to another CNI. I mean, there is no process for doing that. And in my opinion, it's very hard to do that without breaking stuff. For instance, I think you mentioned that when you want to delete Antrea, you need to make sure that no pod is using Antrea anymore, for instance, right? Because otherwise all the wiring for that pod will be lost.
Mm-hmm.
So, then there is also this consideration that deleting the resources and doing a cleanup is okay, but the process of switching from one CNI to another is something that needs to be always coordinated. I don't think that we can provide a solution for that in Antrea. From our perspective, removing all the resources that we have created, deallocating all the node level interfaces and bridges and that we create is good enough.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. But right now we don't even do that. Right? So.
Okay. So is there any other bug that you would like to bring up for discussion today?
Not from me, but probably we can share with Chen on this 131.
Okay.
To say it's really hard to backport, or actually we can do it.
Okay, sounds good. Makes sense. And so let's move quickly to proposals, even because we are almost at time. So we currently have 6 open proposals. I'm just going to list them. One is about IPv6 support, including dual stack. The second is about implementing a cookie ID allocator. Then there is the proposal that Shanjun has been working for a while now about IPsec tunnels. Then we had this the Octant integration, which has been also open by Mandy for a while. And then I was curious about support Kubernetes network policies. What items are we still missing? Because I see still open here.
There is a checklist inside, I think.
Yeah, no, there is a checklist, so that's what. Also, it's the test plan missing. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So I'm just thinking aloud here, but we, of course, with the network policies, we cannot enforce network policies on host network pods as well, right? With Antrea.
On which pod you said?
Host network pods.
Sorry, you mean node portal?
No, I mean
not the pods that are running in host network mode.
I see.
Yeah,
we don't support that
yeah.
with Antrea.
They don't get attached to the bridge, right? So they don't get a port on the OBS bridge.
Yeah, but also because all the pods on a given all the pods on a given node tend to have the same IP address, so we cannot really distinguish. Anyway, so and let's see, in terms of features instead, what do we have? Nothing. Sorry, not it's not. Maybe I got the labeling correctly.
It's enhancement.
Enhancement. It's enhancement. So in terms of enhancement, we have use bundle to add or modify multiple flow entries in the same operation, which I have to be honest, I don't know what it is about. I guess this is about the OpenFlow client.
Yeah, that gives transaction semantics to operations you do through the OpenFlow client. So basically, you say, these are the flows I want to install on my OVS switch, and it's a null or nothing operation. So if one fails, none of the changes get committed. That kind of makes like a cleanup, error handling easier in the OpenFlow client, because you don't need to do any kind of rollback if one of the operations fail, especially in the network policy case where we install like a lot of flows at the same time, kind of like, and we'd like to do that in an atomic fashion.
Okay, I see. So instead, why is kind not working on macOS?
So, okay, I can get in a bit of details here, but basically to run Antrea on kind, we need to use the netdev data path type for OVS. And that's because kind means like basically all your Kubernetes nodes or container running on the same machine. And so they share the same kernel on the host. And obviously on macOS, well, you don't have the OVS kernel module. And so when you run OVS in user space mode, it doesn't take care of updating the checksum for you. And so basically that means that you need to disable checksum TX offload on every VS interface, not the one attached to the bridge, but the other side. And so for containers, this is pretty straightforward, because for pods, because we are the one setting up the networking for pods in Antrea. So basically what I do is, if the data path type is netdevs, and I just call istool in the pod and I disable like TX offload. But the issue is that you also need to do that on the VS interface that takes care of the node networking. So for that VS interface, one end of it is on your laptop basically, and the other one is in the node namespace. Otherwise, all the packets, all the traffic that goes out of the node, all the TCP traffic, has an incorrect checksum. And so on Linux, it's pretty straightforward because of how like Docker container networking work. You basically just do the same thing, use istool on the VEs, but on macOS, there is no such mechanism to disable like TX checksum offload on Mac. And so, plus Docker networking works completely differently on macOS. Basically, you don't have direct access to the container network. You just have like port mapping, basically. So I spent a bit of time on this, but I'm not a macOS networking expert, and I couldn't find like a good way of resolving the issue. Basically, kind on macOS with Antrea right now, a lot of stuff is working, pod-to-pod traffic, node-to-node traffic. But if you try to do node-to external traffic, basically you get like corrupted TCP checksums on everything coming through the laptop. So if you install software on the node, for example.
Okay, that's very good to know. And I am no networking expert for macOS as well. For me, macOS is just a jump box to go to some Linux machine, pretty much.
Yeah, I used to feel that way too, but I realized that Go programming on the macOS was actually pretty good. So
okay, I see.
Especially with like cross compilation support, it's pretty much like a first-class citizen in Go, so that makes it easier. And I mean, kind is not the ideal place, I think, to like debug and develop like a CNI, but it's kind of like gaining momentum. They're running conformant tests for Kubernetes on kind, so a lot of developers like are pretty fond of kind in the Kubernetes sphere, so that's why we started like supporting it. And
developers are not going to use kind to test transit, but they are going to test network policy in kind. That's good. It's a great training ground for that.
Yeah, so we may, and basically, yeah, that's a good point, Cody. And I didn't, I mean, what I wanted to do basically is I wanted to make as little changes to the Antrea code base itself to enable it to run on kind. And so that's why we're using the OVS user space data path. And that itself has a lot of complications. Basically, for example, for tunneling to work, for the overlay network to work, you need to create a second bridge on every node. It's been a major headache just to make it work on Linux. Now it works pretty well on Linux, But yeah, if we want to make it work on macOS, there is that big issue to resolve, and I kind of put it on standby because I didn't have a good way of. I tried a few things in macOS to try to disable TX checksum upload, but there is no like per interface setting like in Linux. So that made it complicated. Yeah. Maybe we'll have a way like to do like network. If we have a network policy only mode in Antrea, maybe that will be able to run in kind on macOS.
All right, so we are at time for today. Is there, let's have just a bit of open discussion. Is there anything else that you would like to bring up for our first Antrea community meeting?
Nope. Thanks for leading the meeting, Salvatore.
Yeah, no, sure. And okay, so I believe that we can finish here. So thank you very much for attending, and have a good morning, a good afternoon, good evening, or a good night.
Yeah, thanks you too. See you
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.